Hello, today's story is about a man who committed a brutal murder when he was young. After being imprisoned, he repented. The case spanned many years with many differing opinions on the appropriate sentence for the criminal. Ultimately, the Supreme Court of Japan established a standard for determining whether a death sentence should be issued. This is known as the Nagazama Standard, which is often applied in criminal cases in Japan. The case and its rulings have left a significant mark on the development history of Japan's judicial system. Next, we will turn back time to 1968 to explore the details of this event. In the fall of 1968, in Tokyo, Hakata, and Nagoya, within just 1 month, there were a series of 4 consecutive murders. The victims were 2 security guards and 2 taxi drivers, all brutally killed. Through investigation, the police concluded that the same perpetrator was responsible for these crimes. The revelations caused great panic and fear among local residents. The Japanese police faced unprecedented pressure. They mobilized a large force, swept the areas around the crime scenes, and identified over 80,000 suspects. The perpetrator acted randomly, without a clear motive. After committing the crimes, he would vanish without a trace, leaving very few clues at the scenes, making the investigation very challenging. A few months later, at dawn on April 7, 1969, a security guard on duty at a school in Shibuya District, Tokyo, heard the alarm of an office in the school opposite ringing. The guard immediately ran over to check and found a man rummaging through belongings inside. As soon as he saw the guard, the man pulled out a gun, fired 2 shots, and fled towards the Meiji Shrine near the school. Fortunately, the guard reacted quickly and escaped death. This criminal was indeed audacious. Instead of chasing him, the guard hurried to the nearest police station to report the incident. Recently, similar incidents had been occurring frequently in Japan, drawing special attention from the Tokyo police. They immediately deployed forces, sealed off the Meiji Shrine, and searched the surrounding area. Meiji Shrine is located in Shibuya District, central Tokyo, spanning 70 hectares with dense forest, making it ideal for hiding. At 5:28 a.m., a policeman patrolling one of the entrances of the Meiji Shrine spotted a man sneaking out of the forest. The officer immediately stopped the man and demanded identification. The man stammered and spoke incoherently. Just as he turned to run, the police, who had set up an ambush, subdued him. During a search, the police found a revolver and 17 bullets in his pocket. The man was arrested on the spot. Under interrogation, the man identified himself as Nagazama Nodio, 19 years old, unemployed. He confessed to all the recent incidents in Tokyo, Kyoto, Hakata, and Nagoya, claiming sole responsibility. Nagazama Nodio was born in June 1949 in Hokkaido. His father was an apple farmer, and his mother was a small trader. The couple had 8 children, 4 boys and 4 girls. Nagazama Nodio was the 7th child in the family. Due to their busy work schedules, the parents had no time to care for the children, leaving everything under the responsibility of the eldest sister, who was 19 years older than Norio. When Norio was 4 years old, his sister, then 23, was abandoned by her lover and miscarried. Overwhelmed by grief, she developed a mental illness and had to be hospitalized. The burden of caring for the young children then fell entirely on their mother. The children's father was an alcoholic who often did not come home. He never cared for his children, only coming home to ask his wife for money and then leaving again. The mother had to earn a living while taking care of her many small children, making life extremely challenging. A few months later, the mother became physically and mentally exhausted, unable to cope with the family responsibilities. She decided to return to her hometown in Sakazawa Village, Kitatsugaru District, Aomori Prefecture. Before leaving, she wanted to take all her children with her, but didn't have enough money to buy train tickets for everyone. Ultimately, she could only take 3 of the children. Norio, who was then just 4 years old, was one of the 4 left behind. The innocent child didn't understand what was happening and didn't realize his mother had left Hokkaido to return to her hometown. Their irresponsible father paid no attention to the children. For a long time after, Norio lived a life of subsistence with his sister, relying on scavenging and fishing to survive. A compassionate neighbor, seeing the pitiful situation of the children, contacted the local social welfare center. Thanks to their intervention, the 4 children were eventually taken to Aomori Prefecture, where their mother lived. Norio also got to attend elementary school, but because he couldn't speak the local dialect, he was frequently bullied by his classmates. At home, he was mistreated by his second older brother. The mother also disliked Norio because he resembled his irresponsible father. By the 2nd grade, unable to endure the suffocating life, Nodio often ran away from home, sneaking onto trams to escape. However, each time, she was discovered by kind people and brought to the police station. The police would then contact her mother to come and pick up her son. This recurring event exhausted her mother and affected her work. She decided to change her approach, strictly demanding her second son not to bully his younger sibling. She herself also treated Nodio better. By 5th grade, Nodio's older sister recovered from her illness and was discharged from the hospital. During a period of being cared for by his sister, Nodio had a relatively peaceful life. However, this tranquility didn't last long. Somehow, his sister fell in love with a neighboring man and once again had an unplanned pregnancy. Later, after a miscarriage, she had a heart attack and had to return to the hospital for treatment. During his middle school years, Nodio balanced his studies with helping his brother deliver newspapers to earn extra income for the family. During this period, he also received news of his father's death. Nodio had not seen much of his father since childhood, so he didn't have many memories of him. At the funeral, Nodio's second brother told him that their mother had also abandoned them, just as their father did. This deeply devastated Nodio. He felt abandoned by both parents and constantly bullied by those around him. He lost all faith in life and even contemplated doing something reckless. From then on, Nodio became indifferent to life. He grew hot, tempered, and violent, often beating his sister and niece at home. During the summer break of his 2nd year of middle school, Nodio's mother suddenly left home to work far away without informing anyone in the family. Although she returned a month later, this incident made Nodio feel abandoned by his mother once again. Shortly after her return, Nodio's mother suffered a stroke and was hospitalized. His sister and niece fearing Nodio's violence, stayed in the hospital every day to care for their mother, leaving Nodio alone at home. Feeling abandoned by everyone, Nodio began associating with a group of delinquent youths. Together, they stole from stores and hid the stolen goods at home. As graduation approached, Nodio encouraged his friends to steal from a store again. Unexpectedly, on the way, Nodio encountered his mother. Filled with resentment from being abandoned multiple times, Nodio sneaked into a residence, intending to steal clothes and deliberately get caught by the homeowner. The homeowner, seeing Nodio's young age, forgave him. However, his mother, feeling humiliated, considered having such a son to be utterly shameful, fearing future gossip. In anger, she expelled Nodio from the house. In March 1965, at the age of 16, Nodio went alone to the Shibuya district in Tokyo. There, he found a job at a high-end fruit store. Nodio, small in stature, standing about 1.6 meters tall, often looked customers in the eye with his large, lively eyes, creating a sense of familiarity, like a younger brother from the neighborhood, making him very endearing to customers. The store's business flourished due to his hard work and quickness. Recognizing his diligence and trustworthiness, the store owner entrusted Nodio with managing a new store alongside another manager. Every year, the fruit store visited the Aomori province to recruit new employees. This year, during the recruitment process, a store employee accidentally discovered Nodio's previous theft records in his documents. Upon returning to Tokyo, this employee reported the findings to the store owner, who then occasionally reminded Nodio not to consider stealing again. Suffering from paranoid delusions, a form of chronic mental illness characterized by systematic and organized delusional thoughts, mainly involving common life situations, like being watched, poisoned, secretly loved, deceived, or harmed, Nodio believed the fruit store wanted to fire him. Rather than live in fear, he decided to quit on his own and sought permission from the owner to resign. Nodio then moved to the Sanja district in Tokyo to stay with his third brother. However, after a while, his brother asked him to leave. At this point, Nodio decided to escape to Denmark, sneaking onto a Danish cargo ship in Yokohama port. Unfortunately, when the ship docked in Hong Kong, the sailors discovered Nodio and deported him back to Japan. Returning, Nodio sought refuge with his eldest brother in Ozumi City, Tochigi Province. He got a job at an auto parts manufacturing factory near the local government office. His eldest brother didn't care much about Nodio, often ignoring and not talking to him. Nodio once again felt abandoned. He hated his brother and wanted to take revenge by stealing from a nearby meat shop to tarnish his brother's reputation. As a result, Nodio was arrested by the police. In November 1965, Nodio was detained at the Uchichi-Nobisa Juvenile Correctional Facility. In Japan, juvenile offenders are often sent to such facilities for rehabilitation. After reviewing the case, the family court found that Nodio had shown remorse for his theft and decided not to prosecute him. In 1966, at the age of 17, Nodio found a job at a rice shop in Suda, Osaka Prefecture. During the formalities, he was required to provide his family registration information. His permanent residence was registered in Abashiri City, Hokkaido. At that time, A famous film titled Abashiri Bangechi, set in Abashiri City, had just been released. The city was notorious for being a cold, desolate place that housed many prisoners. Nodio feared that people would find out about his family registration and think he was from a prison family. Additionally, the rice shop owner's son had gone on a business trip to Tokyo. Nodio suspected that the son was investigating his background. Fearing his past would be discovered, making him a target for ridicule and bullying, he decided to quit the job. Nodio returned to Tokyo and found a job at a cafe in Jide. A few days into the job, he sneaked into the U.S. military base in Yokosuka to steal. He was caught red-handed and taken to the Yokohama Juvenile Correctional Center. Due to his unsociable nature, Nodio was bullied by his schoolmates. A month later, the case was brought to trial at the Yokohama District Court's Yokosuka branch. Hearing about Nodio's arrest, his mother and second brother traveled from their hometown to visit him. After the hearing, the court found that Nodio had shown remorse and decided to grant him a suspended sentence, meaning he wouldn't have to serve time in prison. Seeing his mother and brother visit, Nodio felt family warmth for the first time. He resolved to reform and turn his life around. Around 1967, at the age of 18, Nodio was admitted to Nakano High School, affiliated with Meiji Gakuin University, located in Nakano Ward, Tokyo. He began studying diligently and quickly became the top student in his class. Nodio also found joy in life by joining the school's drama club. To cover his tuition fees, Nodio worked part-time at a gas station in Shinjuku Ward. One day, a court officer visited the gas station to check on Nodio's situation. Nodio mistakenly believed the officer had informed the employer about his criminal record. His paranoia resurfaced. Dreading ridicule and job loss, he once again decided to quit. Nodio dropped out of school, severed contact with his family and friends, and took up a job as a dock worker at Yokohama Port. During this time, he applied to join the Japan Self-Defense Forces, but was rejected due to his criminal record. Nodio returned to Tokyo and found a job delivering gas at a shop in Shinjuku. One day while working, he forgot to turn off the kettle, causing the tatami mat to catch fire. Fearful of retribution from his colleagues, he secretly boarded a freight ship at Kobe Port, planning to escape abroad. Nodio even contemplated suicide at sea, but was discovered by the crew and sent back to Japan. He was then placed in another juvenile correctional center. His third brother visited him, stirring Nodio's sense of family once more. With his brother's encouragement, Nodio returned to school. He excelled academically and was elected class president, but he misinterpreted this as mockery. Unbearable of such life, he dropped out and returned to Aomori Prefecture. Nodio wished to continue high school locally, but the school refused him upon learning his past. At home, his mother frequently scolded him. Unable to bear it, Nodio borrowed money from her and went back to dock work in Yokohama. Experienced, he was quickly hired full-time. During his tenure, his second brother sought him out for help, falsely claiming to need a large sum for hospital expenses due to severe illness. Upon hearing this, Nodio handed over all the money he had saved to his older brother. In reality, Nodio's second brother was not ill. He merely wanted to take Nodio's money. A few months later, during a bout of illness, Nodio took a leave from work without permission and was subsequently fired. Without a place to stay, Nodio sought refuge at his second brother's house, only to be thrown out of the house by the very brother. From that moment, Nodio began his path down a road of irredeemable crime. On the night of October 8, 1968, 19-year-old Nodio sneaked into the Yokosuka base of the U.S. military. He stole a .22 caliber revolver, 50 bullets, a dagger, a camera, 2 handkerchiefs, and some miscellaneous items. For the following days, Nodio wandered the streets of Tokyo aimlessly with the stolen goods. When tired, he slept on public benches. On the night of October 10, Nodio reached Tokyo Tower. Feeling exhausted, he fell asleep on a bench. At midnight, Nodio woke up and looked up to see the brightly lit and magnificent Tokyo Berlin Hotel near Tokyo Tower. He decided he wanted to go there and have a look. At 12:50 a.m., Nodio approached the southern lawn of the main building of the Tokyo Berlin Hotel. A security guard patrolling the area noticed Nodio and asked if he needed help. Nodio pointed towards the main building and expressed his desire to go inside, but the guard refused. Angered, Nodio attempted to force his way in but was restrained by the guard, who was preparing to take him to the police station. At that moment, Nodio realized that if he was taken to the police station, his theft at the military base would be discovered. Desperate to avoid being taken to the police, he pulled out the stolen revolver and shot the guard twice before fleeing. The guard was taken to the hospital in critical condition, but died at 11 a.m. the next day. After committing the murder, Nodio went to Yokohama Station and took a train straight to Kyoto. By the evening of October 13, Nodio arrived at the Yasaka Shrine in Kyoto looking for a place to rest. Around 1:35 a.m., a security guard at the shrine discovered Nodio skulking around and approached him. Fearing he would be caught, Nodio pointed to the front of the shrine to distract the guard before unexpectedly pulling out his gun and firing 4 shots. Nodio then fled into a nearby forest. Despite being rushed to the hospital, the guard did not survive and died at 5 a.m. the same day. Ballistics analysis of the bullets determined that the murders at the Yasaka Shrine and at the Tokyo Berlin Hotel were committed using the same gun. The criminal struck at night, targeting security guards, and the motive remained unclear. 5 days after the Kyoto incident, Nodio returned to Tokyo and sought out his second brother for money. Nodio brandished the gun and bragged about committing the recent murders. He declared that having nowhere else to go, he would return to Hokkaido and end his life. Shocked, his brother urged Nodio to surrender to the police and handle the situation calmly, but Nodio refused to listen. Carrying 8,000 yen, Nodio traveled from Uno Station to Amori Station, then took a ferry across the strait and proceeded from Station to Hakadate, Hokkaido. Finally, he took a train to Sapporo. Along the journey, Nodio contemplated his death, but decided to visit Sapporo once more before ending his life. In Sapporo, Nodio roamed the streets, and perhaps seeing the beauty of life again made him abandon his suicidal thoughts. A week later, he returned to Hakadate with his money running out. Around 10:50 p.m., Nodio got into a taxi. When the vehicle reached a deserted area, he shot and killed the driver, stealing 7,000 yen in cash and some vouchers. After the murder, Nodio hid in Yokohama, causing an uproar in the local community. Fearing capture, he continued to flee. On November 5, Nodio left Yokohama for Nagoya, now down to only 2,000 yen. Repeating his previous tactic, he took a taxi to a deserted area and killed the driver, taking 7,000 yen. Over the next month, a string of shootings in Tokyo, Kyoto, Hakodate, and Nagoya shocked Japan. The Japanese police mobilized all available resources, inspecting inns and hotels nationwide to track down the criminal. They managed to identify over 80,000 potential suspects, including Nodio. However, with few clues at the crime scenes of the 4 murders, the police struggled to narrow down the suspects precisely. The case reached a deadlock. After committing a series of murders, Nodio left Nagoya and hid the gun in Yokohama, Kanagawa Prefecture. During that entire period, Nodio was always fearful that the gun would be discovered by the police, so he returned to Tokyo to bury the gun in the forest near the Meiji Shrine. Unexpectedly, he was spotted by a security guard and subsequently arrested by the police. In August 1969, the case was publicly tried at the Tokyo District Court. Each team member testified that the defendant Nodio had committed 4 serious murders with the intent to rob. The defendant's actions led to the deaths of others, severely impacting society, and thus warranted a strict punishment of the death penalty. The defense attorney argued that in the first and second cases, Nodio did not intend to kill anyone. When he fired, he did not believe his actions would result in the victims' deaths, hence he aimed at non-vital parts of their bodies. The defense attorney also stated that, according to a psychiatric evaluation at the time of the crimes, Nodio was in a state of mental instability or impairment. Nodio denied all the prosecution's accusations, stating in court, "The reason for these incidents was that at that time I was suffering and ignorant. I hated everything because capitalism had created people like me who were suffering." Due to continuous changes in defense attorneys and other reasons, the trial was repeatedly postponed, and the presiding judge was changed 3 times. After several years since his arrest, the Tokyo District Court finally handed down its verdict. The defendant, Nagazama Nodio, was found guilty of murder and several other offenses and was sentenced to death. In the judgment, it was noted that the defendant had some mitigating circumstances, such as an unfortunate childhood and committing the crimes at a very young age. However, the manner in which the crimes were committed was extremely cruel and cold-blooded. To achieve his goals, the defendant ruthlessly shot the victims at close range. The defendant's brother had urged him to surrender, but Nodio not only ignored this advice, but continued to commit crimes. The defendant also blamed society and the country, showing no signs of remorse. His actions caused extreme outrage and fear in society. After considering all aspects, the trial panel decided to impose the maximum penalty of death on the defendant. After the sentence was announced, Nodio disagreed with the court's decision and appealed to the Tokyo High Court. During his detention, Nodio began writing. He published an autobiography titled Tears of Imprisonment. The book quickly became a bestseller at the time. Subsequently, Nodio continued to write and publish many other works. In prison, Nodio displayed unprecedented remorse. He used all the money earned from his writings to compensate the victims' families and pleaded for their forgiveness. In the subsequent years, thanks to frequent appearances in the media, Nodio gained a significant following. Among his fans was a girl named Kazumi, who wrote to Nodio several times. Eventually, they developed feelings for each other and got married. In prison, Nodio married Kazumi. In December 1980, the appellate trial took place at the Tokyo High Court. At the trial, Nodio's wife pleaded with the court to reduce her husband's sentence and sought forgiveness from the victims' families. Nodio himself also expressed deep remorse. According to Japanese law at that time, individuals aged 20 and older were considered adults. Minors were given legal protection under juvenile law. This law was enacted based on special provisions for juvenile protection procedures in the Criminal Procedure Code. The juvenile law is numbered as Law No. 68 of 1948, issued on July 15, 1948. Juvenile law provided for reduced sentences and special support policies for juvenile offenders. The rationale for this was that juveniles still had the potential for education and rehabilitation. Depending on their age, juveniles aged 0 to 19 were subject to different levels of punishment. Notably, juveniles aged 18 to just under 20, if convicted of a crime punishable by death or life imprisonment, but not eligible for reduced sentencing, could be treated as adults. At the trial, the defense attorney argued that at the time of the crime, Nodio, who was 19, was still considered a juvenile. Given Nodio grew up in an emotionally deprived environment and was psychologically immature, he deserved a reduced sentence. The defense attorney also noted that Nodio had shown positive changes, got married in prison, and received forgiveness from the victims' families. Taking his life now would be a loss. In August 1981, the Tokyo High Court dismissed the initial death penalty sentence and instead sentenced Nodio to life imprisonment. After the verdict was announced, disagreeing with the court's decision, the prosecution appealed to the Supreme Court, arguing that the sentence given to the defendant was too lenient. The Supreme Court agreed with the prosecution's perspective and requested that the Tokyo High Court retry the case. 3 years later, the third trial took place at the Tokyo High Court. The prosecution argued that Nodio had caused the deaths of multiple victims, leaving a negative impact on society. Although Nodio was only 19 years old at the time of the crime and still considered a minor, according to the law, his criminal acts were especially serious and could warrant a life sentence. On the contrary, the defense lawyers claimed that, psychologically, Nodio was not yet fully mature. Furthermore, after committing the crime, the defendant showed deep remorse. The lawyers suggested that the death penalty should not be imposed on someone who is not psychologically mature. The Supreme Court argued that the defendant's criminal acts could not be entirely blamed on his living circumstances. The court also provided 9 standards for considering whether to impose the death penalty, including the nature of the crime, the motive, the manner of the crime, the number of victims, the feelings of the victims' families, the societal impact, the age at the time of the crime, criminal history, and the defendant's attitude after committing the crime. The court needed to comprehensively evaluate all these factors, balancing the crime committed by the defendant and the purpose of crime prevention. The death penalty would only be imposed if there was no other option. The Nagazama Nodio case extended over a long period, drawing the attention of all Japanese citizens. The standards set by the Supreme Court later became known as the Nagazama Standard, commonly applied in criminal cases in Japan. Since then, criminal cases in Japan have adhered to the Nagazama Standard. Gradually, it became a crucial measure for determining whether to impose the death penalty in the Japanese judicial system. In May 1990, the Tokyo High Court overturned the previous life sentence and reinstated the death penalty for Nagazama Nodio. 7 years later, Nodio was executed at the age of 48, ending his tragic life. According to Nodio's last wish, his ashes were scattered at sea. While alive, Nodio always believed that the living conditions and experiences during his childhood were the root causes of his life's tragedy. Before his death, Nodio entrusted his lawyer to use all the royalties from his book sales to establish a charity fund for children. This money was intended to help poor children in Japan and worldwide. Nodio hoped that those children would receive proper education, lead better lives, and never follow his path. His story also serves as a reminder of the responsibility of families and society in educating and guiding the younger generation. A childhood lacking family affection, being abandoned, and not receiving proper education turned Nodio from an innocent boy into a dangerous criminal. His final wish to use all his royalties to establish a charity fund for poor children was his way of atoning for his past mistakes. Nodio still wished to bring a brighter future to less fortunate children, so that no child would have to suffer like he did.